Why do some anglers make every cast look effortless while others fight their gear all day? The secret isn't luck. It's knowing how to match your rod, reel, and line and how to take care of them the right way. In this 1-hour masterclass, I'll show you how to choose the right reel, spool it correctly, cast with confidence, and keep your setup performing like new. By the end, you'll know exactly what to buy, how to rig it, and how to fish like a pro. Let's get started with my 6 spinning reel mistakes to avoid.
I know what you're thinking. What in the world is this guy doing? Yeah, I think the same thing every time I see someone on TV using a spinning reel upside down and cranking it backwards. That show lost all credibility with me right there. Today, I'm breaking down 6 common spinning reel mistakes I've seen way too often from beginners and people that should know better. We're talking about reels mounted backwards, using the wrong line, and a couple of things that'll absolutely destroy your reel if you're not careful, especially in saltwater. Let's make sure you're not doing any of these. One of the mistakes new fishermen make is they go down to Walmart or Academy and they go, oh, I'm gonna catch a big fish. So they go down and they buy a 100-pound test braid or monofilament line, and then they go buy a little reel, and then they go put 100-pound test line on a little tiny reel. And that is totally mismatched for what it's supposed to be. If you go put this 100-pound test line on this 2500 spinning reel that I use for wade fishing, you could probably cast it about 20 yards. So the heavier line, it's great for going, straight down and catching a big snapper and bringing it up off the bottom, big snapper or grouper. But for casting and distance, you want that smaller diameter, that lighter line to cast out. So the next thing to know about your reel is whether or not it has an anti-reverse switch on it. So sometimes these can inadvertently get switched. So this is a Pin Battle 3 2500. This is a Pin Battle 3 8000. And this 8000 does not have an anti-reverse switch on it. On this 2500, there is a reverse switch on it, so you can wind the reel backwards. So especially for somebody that's new to spinning reels and they don't know, the right way to reel it and stuff, and if you give this to a friend, you might want to double check that they don't flip that switch so it's off. You always want to have that thing on so that you're only reeling forward. If you start reeling backwards, you're going to throw a line all over the place. For those of you wade fishing, treat this reel like oxygen. If you dunk this reel into the water, it's like suffocating or drowning yourself. You're gonna kill that reel if you get it submerged in salt water. So if you get a tangle in the end of your line, or you get a big fish on that you're fighting to get unhooked and you're out wade fishing, you wanna make sure that reel, take your rod, get it tucked up underneath your arm and protect it right here so it doesn't fall into the water. I see too many people stick the rod back here and then they're working on the tangle and they get the reel submerged in the water. If you get a tangle on the end and you're all by yourself, take the rod and stand it straight up and hold it up straight in the air and work on your issue straight below you. The best thing to do is if you get a tangle like that, walk it back to the boat or walk over to one of your other wade fishing buddies and have them hold your rod while you get it untangled, or have them untangle it for you. If you get a little spray from the boat, spraying salt water on it, or if you accidentally, kind of just dip it briefly in there, you want to make sure you get it out of the water and clean it when you get back to the dock immediately. I recommend that people do not spray it with city water with chlorine. I've been told by reel experts that, and you can see it too if you've ever seen city water on things where it starts to get that little green rust on it. Chlorine is a corrosive, and if you spray these reels, they will start corroding with that chlorinated water. If you want to wash it with water, use distilled water, bottled water that doesn't have any chlorine in it, or use a reel cleaner. There are a number of different reel cleaners out there. I will link a number of them down in the video description if you want to get your hands on them. And that's what I do. I spray it with the reel cleaner, and then I take my paper towel and I'll wipe it down with that. I'll put some reel cleaner on a paper towel and I'll wipe that down my fishing rod. Oh no! I didn't cock the bail back on the spool, so now I don't have a way to reel the line on. So one way to address this issue of not having the bail open is that you can remove the spool off of the reel. So loosen up the drag all the way till it unscrews off, and then you can open the bail, pull the bail back, and then you can put the spool back on and tighten it back up, and then close the bail. So that's how to solve that problem if you ever run into that where you tie the line on, you didn't put the line inside the bail. To reiterate my pet peeve on seeing people hold a spinning reel upside down and then reeling it backwards. That is not how a spinning reel is designed to work. The spinning reel always is at the bottom. A bait caster, on the other hand, is on top. The spinning reel, you always crank forward. If you want to crank with your right hand and hold the rod in your left hand, you need to switch the reel handle from this side over to this side. All spinning reels allow you to do that.
So if you've been making any of these mistakes, hey, no shame. The good news is they're easy to fix.
Ever wonder why your cast comes up short? Or why your reel feels wrong for the fish you're chasing? It might not be you, it could be the line or the reel size. If you're new here, I'm Captain Kevin, and you might just learn something new here today. I've used everything from a 2000 to an 8000 series spinning reel, chasing everything from crappie to large offshore fish. And today, I'm breaking that all down. You're going to learn what size line I actually use and why, when to use each reel size, my trick for saving money by keeping half the line when you're respooling, how I connect new line to the old line the right way, and how to spool your new reel like a pro, no matter what size line you're running. Let's get you dialed in and ready for non-stop action. So I'm going to start by talking about line size that I use on my reels. So about 95% of the reels that I use for bass fishing, striper fishing, white bass fishing, redfish, trout, I use 20-pound braid. When I was guiding, I went with the big spools of 20 pound. So I've probably loaded up over 20, 30 reels with this 20-pound braid. It is 6-pound monofilament equivalent. So it casts excellent, and just from a all-around good braid, I highly recommend this Power Pro green. You don't really see it in the water at all, and it has worked for me fabulous. I can't remember the last time I'd had a break in this line. I do get wind knots every once in a while and have to cut them out and put some new line on the reels, but for the most part, I go for a long time, probably multiple years before I respool or put new line on reels, because this braid works just great. Here's a smaller spool. This is actually the P-Line brand. Most of what I use is Power Pro, but here's a P-Line. This is a smaller 300 yard spool. This was 1500 yards. So I'll show you later in this video of how we put this line on the reels. For my bigger reels, like 8,000 and my 5,000, these reels I use for offshore big game fishing. I'll put on a 100-pound Power Pro. I go with a little bit heavier because you can crank down the drag and fight those bigger fish in. Going down to my smaller stuff, probably the smallest I put on is 8 or 10 pound Power Pro. This super slick. I'll put it on my 2000 series reels that I've got, these Siennas. This is what I've used for crappie fishing. I've got about 6 of these set up for my different size crappie rods that I use. This is a 300-yard spool of 10 pound. It is 2 pound equivalent in monofilament line. But with crappie fishing, you're not doing a lot of casting. Most of the fishing I'm doing is with live scope, and you're dropping straight down and picking off one at a time. All right, so now let's talk about spinning reels and what sizes of spinning reels I use for different types of fishing. I'm gonna first start out with, it's not specifically a spinning reel, but starting with the smallest fish I fish for. As I guided, I ran a lot of kid trips, and this was my #1 go-to reel when we're running kid trips and we're just going out there and we're catching small perch and smaller catfish. This Zebco 33, you can get off of Amazon. I'll put some links in the description of the video on where you can get these. But this Zebco 33 has been awesome. It also allows you to move the handle from side to side. So just like a spinning reel, you can move the handle on either side. A bait caster, you can't. But these spinning reels and this Zebco 33, you can move it. So this already comes preloaded, I think probably with 10 pound monofilament. But for kids, this is an excellent choice for getting them started catching perch. The next reel is a 2000 series reel. This is a Sienna, Shimano Sienna 2000. I use this primarily for crappie fishing. The 2500 series reels I use now for all of my saltwater wade fishing. I used to use 4000 series, but as I've gotten older, I like the lighter 2500 series. This is a Penn Battle 2500. I also really like the Shimano Stratic 2500. I've fished the Stratic a lot, and it has been a really good reel. The 4000 series reel, I used to use these all the time for saltwater fishing in the bay because I thought I needed a bigger reel for those big redfish. Now you may, if you're going after bull reds at the jetties, you may want to go to these 4000s. You can crank down the drag a little bit more and put more line on them to chase them around. But when you're wade fishing, most of your fish are going to stay within 50 yards of wherever you are. They may pull off a little drag off that 2500, but the 2500 probably weighs half as much as this 4000. So you're lugging this thing around all day, you definitely know it. The 5000 series, this is an older Cabela's Salt Striker that I've used for many years down at the coast on my offshore trips for kingfish, snapper fishing, any of those offshore type fish that we go out for and catch offshore. This 8000 series Penn Battle Reel I got for Costa Rica catching marlin and tuna. And this one I've also used on many of my snapper trips. For my line demonstration today, we're gonna pull off some of this braid that is on this 4000. This is a Shimano Sahara reel, and there's a couple ways to do it. I mean, you can manually just pull it off. I'm gonna pull off about half of the spool, and I'm going to put new line on about halfway down. When you're fishing, most of the fishing you're gonna be doing is within 50, 60 yards of wherever you're wade fishing. So you don't need a whole lot of line on the reel. And if you take all the line off and you put brand new line on, you're only going to be using the top 20% of that line most of the time. But you do want the reel spooled full. When you cast, If you don't have that spool full, you're going to create friction on the edge of that spool, and it's going to catch and slow down your cast. So you want to make sure that you fill it all the way up. So we're going to use this tool here to remove the line off this reel. So this is a battery operated line tool. So I can put it in there and you can see it spitting it away. So we'll take about half the line down on this one. So I'm back down to really good green line that's never seen any salt water off of that reel. It's never been cast off that far. All right, so we're gonna cut that line there with some scissors. So I've got these 2-piece toadfish rods, and this will work just fine for what we're gonna do to load up this reel. Put this reel on the rod. We will then feed the line up through this one eyelet. I really just need this one eyelet so that we can apply a little friction there. Now we're gonna open that up, and then I'm gonna tie my Alberto knot. This is my favorite knot to use to connect 2 lines together. If you want to see my other go-to knots that I use all the time, you can see that video up here. I'll link it up above over here. So let's snip off those 2 ends. All right, there is our line connected. Now what I do to hold it, there's a number of ways you can do it. I usually find a box or this Tupperware container, and I put it in that Tupperware container to keep it from, it provides a little friction as I'm loading the line on it, and it just holds it there. So now I can reel it. So most people recommend you put this line up to about 1/8 of an inch to 1/16 of an inch from the top. It's better to put on a little bit extra when you're putting the line on. And if you find that the line's fallen off on you, you can always cut off 10 yards or so to get it to the right length so it stays on the spool. You don't want to do it too short, because then you can't go add additional line. So it's better to add a little bit extra, and you have to tweak it just maybe on your first or second use. So I'm gonna cut it off there, and I'll hold this tight to put it down the rest of the way. If you've seen any of my other videos, I always have rubber bands on my wrist. Put that rubber band around that reel, keep that line on there. So that's how I spool up my 20-pound braid on the majority of my reels. Now we're gonna go put new line on one of my crappie reels, this 8-pound test. So I'm gonna use a device that I bought many years ago. It's a line spooling device. So you can hold the reel and the line at the same time. I'll provide a link in the description of where you can pick one of these up if you want to get one. So there's the reel, and then the line will go into this device like so to hold it, and then you can tighten down the drag that holds the line there while you're spooling it on. So as long as it's in there pretty snug and it's not going to fall out, that should work good for me. How do we go about putting on this line on to this reel here? So this is a new reel. It's never had line on it. So we use what's called an arbor knot to start the line onto this spool. So sometimes reels will have a backing on here that keeps the line from slipping. This one does not. So we're going to tie the arbor knot onto the spool, and then I'll show you one of the tricks I do to keep it from slipping. So an arbor knot is literally an overhand knot at the end of the line, and because this line is so small, I'm going to go through 4 or 5 times to make that end knot a little bit fatter, so that it doesn't pull through. Okay, and then you literally go around the spool, and then you tie another overhand knot over the top of that line. And then when you pull it tight, that first knot that you tied, it gets snagged in the whole operation of what you're doing there. Now we're tight. So what I like to do is pull that into the middle there. So my tip here to keep that line from spinning around on the inside of the spool is to use a little piece of painter's tape. This is painter's masking tape. You can get it at Home Depot or Lowe's, and just tear off just a little bit of piece that you can put onto the middle of this line to keep it spinning around. You're never going to see it again because the line's going to get it all covered up. Actually, that one's going to be a little too big, so make it a little bit smaller. And that will keep that line from spinning on the reel. Okay, so now we've got that. We're going to close the bail by hand. If you've seen any of my other videos on using spinning reels, you always open the bail with your hand and you close the bail with your hand. Don't use the handle to close the bail. Your reel will last you a lot longer if you close it by hand. All right, so now we're just gonna slowly crank on that line onto the reel. And since this is the first time I've loaded this, yes, you're gonna use a little bit more. You could put some old monofilament down as the initial backing to load the reel halfway if you wanted to. Save you a little money on braid. But for this one, I'm just gonna load it up with new line so it's ready to go for future change outs. And this spool's got about 300 yards of line on it. I make a little note of when I load a reel, and I probably usually say that I use about 100 yards per reel. For a spool, I'll usually load up about 3 reels per spool. So this one actually, and this is gonna be a crappie reel, so not super important that it's totally full because you're not really casting it, but that's pretty close to full. So we'll snip it off there and call that one loaded up. All right, rubber band, put that around the reel, and you now have a loaded reel. This little clip right here, this is not to start your line out. This is not to tick your line in here and then wrap it around the reel. This little tick is to hold the line on the outside if you don't have a rubber band. Whether you're tossing lures at bass with a 2500 or chasing bull reds with a 4000, understanding your reel and line setup matters. These tips will save you money, improve your casts, and give you more confidence on the water.
You ever buy a spinner reel, slap it on a rod, and then realize you have no idea which way to turn the handle, where the drag is, or why the line keeps falling off? You're not alone. And today we're fixing that once and for all. Hey y'all, I'm Captain Kevin. And whether you just picked up your first spinning reel, or you've taken it out on the water and it's just not doing what you want it to do, this video is your crash course on getting it dialed in the right way from the very start. We'll cover how to mount it, set it up so you're holding the rod in your dominant hand, adjusting your drag, using that anti-reverse switch, and to make it interesting, I'm throwing in a real-world comparison with a bait caster and why I usually don't use one. By the end of this video, you'll be ready to hit the water like a pro.
So let's first start with putting a spinning reel on a rod. I've got 2 different types of rod here, so I'm gonna demonstrate 2 different ways that these can go on. So take the reel seat here. This will slide into the rod, and this has the crank on the top of the rod to secure the reel onto the rod. On a spinning rod, you always want the eyelets facing down. So on this other rod that I have here, this one has the crank on the back of reel seat here. So when you tighten it up, it's going to go up over the T of the reel from the back. So now I've got that reel secured onto the rod. You can crank it down. Another tip on putting these on is after you use them, especially in saltwater, is to always clean these off real good around the screw here on the rod. I have had some of these twist-ons locked up with too much salt water in them if they don't get cleaned up real good. All right, the next thing I want to talk about is right-handed versus left-handed. Now, what I always tell my clients when I'm running a guided trip is that I always ask them if they're right-handed or left-handed. For me, I want to hold the rod in the hand that is your dominant hand. So in this setup, I've got it set up so that you would hold it with your left hand and crank with right. This rod, I'm going to hold the rod in my right hand, and I'm right-handed. So this is how I always fish, is that I always want to be holding that rod in my right hand, which is my strong arm, and then I want to be cranking forward with the reel. When you reel the rod, you want to hold that rod steady and crank, keep the rod tip up if you get a fish on, and then crank that steady. What you don't want to do is be jerking the rod like this. I've had many clients on the boat, they get a fish on and they get excited and they just start whacking the rod like this. That is one sure way to rip that hook out of the fish's mouth. So again, you want to keep that rod steady, the tip up, and reel consistently. All right, now how to change this to the left-handed side, or for a left-handed person. Many of these reels you can just crank backward and they'll unscrew. This one, you must unscrew the right-hand side here, and there's going to be a bolt that goes through the entire reel. There, you can see that bolt that goes all the way through there, and then it's got a little piece of plastic that's a square piece that's on that threaded bolt there. That holds the reel handle when it goes through. So here's the reel handle. You pull that out the side. You move it to the right-hand side of the reel, and then you will reapply the cap cover here with that bolt. That bolt will now screw back into the center of that reel. So now you want to secure that all the way down. So see how this handle is loose right there? You want to make sure this gets cranked all the way down to where it's tight. And then that reel handle is secure there. So now, if I'm left-handed, I'm holding it with my strong left hand, and I'm reeling forward with my right hand. That is for left-handed individuals. So other reels, you will, so because this one's loose, I'll just give you a tip here. This is one way when you're traveling, is you can unscrew this reel here and lay that handle in. It takes less room to pack this in a box. So instead of having the handle out all the time, you can loosen it up and have the handle in there for travel purposes. So with this pen reel, cranking with my left hand, holding it in my right. Now I want to switch it so it's left-handed hold. I back the reel all the way off. This side does not have a bolt that goes all the way through it. So this just has a cap on it. So you can just move the cap to the other side. And this one, then you can reel forward. Get that bolt centered in the reel there and crank forward. So now I've got a reel that you can crank with your right hand, holding the rod with your left. That's how you can flip the handle from one side to the other. So different designs of reels on how you can move the handle from side to side. So now let's talk a couple considerations on spinning reels versus bait casters. And this is purely Captain Kevin's opinion and my experience over the last 40, 50 years of fishing. I have about 40 different spinning reels. I have about 3 or 4 different bait caster reels. The primary reason I use a bait caster is if I'm offshore fishing and I'm trolling, or I'm just bottom fishing, I'm going straight down, or I'm jig fishing. One of the negatives to a bait caster is this reel handle is hardwired into this bait casting reel on the left-hand side. So I'm holding it with my right hand and I'm reeling with my left. There is no way to move this handle from one side to the other. So if I had a friend that was left-handed and I brought this reel along, they wouldn't necessarily be able to use this comfortably. So that's one advantage of having a spinning reel, is you can flip the handle from side to side. My other reason that I don't use bait casters a whole lot is that my experience with backlashes. I had friends that go on saltwater wade fishing trips with me, and I see them struggle in the wind with backlashes. And I'm making 10 more casts while they're trying to pull out a backlash within their reel. Now, some guys have a lot more experience with bait casters and they're good at preventing that. I have just chosen to stick with spinning reels, and that removes that issue for me in backlashes. Now, I still do get some wind knots every once in a while with my spinning reels, and I've done videos on that. You can see those up here. One more point on bait casters versus spinning reels. Some people say, oh, bait casters can cast so much further. So we did a test one time where we took a number of spinning reels and a number of bait casters and our rods, and we put on the exact same lure, and we did some cast tests. And this Shimano 2500 Stratic fishing reel, which is fully loaded, the line is about 1/8 of an inch to the top of the spool. This reel, with a medium heavy 7-foot fishing rod, won out every single casting test between the bait casters and the spinning reels. All of the reasons are, number one, I have the spool fully loaded up to right on the edge. A lot of people say 1/16, 1/8 of an inch away from the edge here. So this is a fully loaded spool. Some guys in the test showed up with their spinning reels. The line was only about half full. So as line comes off this reel, there's friction caused by hitting the edges there, and they just don't cast very far. So when guys show up on some of my fishing trips and they show up with a spinning reel half full, we definitely have to go do some work and put some more line on them. The second reason is that I prefer medium heavy spinning rods. That gives me the ability to cast that lure a lot further than a medium or a light action rod. It's just a stiffer backbone, 7 foot, and I got more oomph to get that lure out there. I fish a 1/32 ounce jig head, and with that medium heavy rod, I can chuck it out there just as far as somebody throwing a medium rod with a 1/8 ounce or 1/4 ounce jig head. Now let's talk about drag. So on a spinning reel, the drag is controlled by this little knob on top of the spinning reel. So when I pull line out, you can hear that click, 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 click there. So this is 20-pound braid. So I can have this cranked down pretty good. And if I want to tighten it even more and then give it a test, I can crank it all the way down to where I can't pull it off there. Now, if you do that, you're probably going to break your leader line, or you can break the braid to get some type of nick in it somewhere down the road. So I always prefer to have a little bit looser braid, not so that it's flying off, but pull so that if you get a good sized trout or redfish on, it's not going to break. A couple weeks ago, I was fishing down at the coast, fishing with the gold spoon, and I pulled the spoon up out of the water, and it was about a foot out of the water, and this redfish jumped out of the water, grabbed the spoon, and took off. Now, if I'd had the drag set real tight, it probably would have broke that knot or broke the leader line, but my drag was light enough that it just took off and out about 20-30 yards of line off the spool, and I was able to fight him back in and did not break that line. So again, this is how you adjust the drag on a spinning reel. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about is the anti-reverse system on many of these reels. So this is a toadfish reel, and it does not have an anti-reverse system in it. So the only way you can reel is reel that forward. If you reel this backwards, the handle's going to come off. So your only way of loosening line up is to loosen the drag and pull some drag out. With this pen reel, notice this little flip switch right here on the bottom. I'm reeling forward, and now if I flip the reverse switch on, I can actually reel backwards. So you may do this if you've got some type of tangle and you need to back the line off a little bit. 99.9% of the time, I never have that anti-lock switch to where it's off. I always want to prevent the reel from going backwards. All right, next little part of the reel that I want to talk about is this little catch piece right here on the side of the reel. This is one option for you to secure your line so that it doesn't fall off the reel when you're not using it. Now you'll see here I've got this is a 20-pound braid, and I've got a 20-pound piece of fluorocarbon leader tied onto the front of this. That leader's a little thick to go through this, so I've just clipped the braid into it. You've seen some of my other videos I talk about where I wear these black rubber bands all the time. They're UV resistant, and the reason I have these on all the time is that I can pull one of those off and put that around the reel to hold the line on that reel so it doesn't come off. So that's 2 different ways that you can secure the line from falling off the reel. I'm going to talk just a little bit about casting with the spinning reel. So you want to have the line going out to where it is next to the top of the rod. And you're going to take your pointer finger and you're going to pinch it off there so that you're holding the line so it doesn't fall off the spool when you cock the bail back. And when I go to cast, I'm going to cast forward and I'm going to let go of that line, and it's going to fall off the spool. The other key point here is that after you've cast, you want to close the bail with your hand. Don't close the bail with your reel. That causes a lot more stress on the reel. It reduces the life of the reel if you use the handle to close it. So always open and close the bail with your hand. All right, now you know how to handle a spinning reel like a seasoned angler. From holding the rod in the correct hand, setting your drag, you're set up for success. If this helped you out, give it a thumbs up, drop your questions in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Ever had your spinning reel start sounding like a coffee grinder mid-trip? Or worse, completely seize up while the bite is hot? Don't let salt, sand, and rookie mistakes ruin your gear or your next day. Hi, if you're new here, I'm Captain Kevin, and you might just learn something new here today. I wade fish the Texas coast. My reels get hammered by salt, spray, crashing waves, and everything in between. Over the years, I've dialed in a simple, effective routine to keep my spinning reels running smooth, trip after trip. Today, I'm breaking down the exact maintenance steps I follow. And trust me, it makes a difference.
Whether you're a weekend warrior or a salty vet, these tips will extend the life of your gear and keep you fishing and not fixing. Let's get into it. Before you start, grab a small screwdriver, some Q-tips, a clean rag or towel, and some reel oil. Tip number 1, keep your reel dry. Are you wade fishing? Treat your reel like it's your oxygen mask. If it gets dunked, it's not instant death, but it's slow suffocation. Salt and grit will start grinding your internals until the reel locks up or loses smoothness. A beginner tip: when dealing with tangled line or unhooking a big fish, tuck that rod under your arm or hand it to a friend while you deal with the issue. Dunking reels is the #1 rookie mistake I see on the water. Tip number 2, remove the reel at the end of your trips. After fishing, take all the lures and tackle off your line and remove the reel from the rod. Reel up any slack line and clip it into the clip or put a rubber band around the line on the spool. Removing the reel prevents long-term corrosion at the reel seat and keeps your reel safe when you're transporting it. Tip number 3, use a light mist of reel cleaner or a spray bottle with distilled water and wipe down your reel with a towel. Don't use city water. City water contains chlorine, and chlorine equals corrosion over time, just like salt. So once you've taken it off the reel, you'll spray it down with your reel cleaner and then take a rag and wipe it down. Get all the salt off of the surface and clean it up the best you can. Tip number 4, never hose it down. Spraying it with a garden hose with city chlorinated water forces chlorine, salt, grit deeper into your reel's internals. You're doing more harm than good. Tip number 5, don't soak it in the sink. Submerging can force chlorinated water into the drag system and gears. Tip number 6, oil the main shaft by removing the spool and then screwing the drag knob until it comes up. And when you take this off, depending on the spinning reel you've got, sometimes there's a couple washers that may come off the top of this. This one does not have it. You can set that bail aside. And then what I like to do is reel this up so that it's totally up at the top. Let's see, right about there. And then you're gonna take, I use this Speedex oil. Get it from Tackletown down in Rockport, Texas. And put a couple dabs of oil on the rod that comes up out of the middle of the reel. Reel that so that gets oiled good. And then we'll put the top back on. The other thing I do is I'll look inside the top of this and I'll clean this out. If there's any sign of salt water that's gotten in here, you can spray this down and clean it out. You can also put a dab or 2 of oil in here. Now we're going to put the drag back on the top. I don't recommend you crank it all the way down. Leave it loose because those washers in there will get compressed if you leave it tight all the time. So you just got to remember that next time you take it out, that you want to tighten that drag down to what you want it to be when you're out fishing. The next point we want to oil is these 2 connections where the bail lever goes back and forth. And I'll just put a dab of oil on each of these so it goes down in. And I recommend, if you know this reel's been dunked, if it actually went under the water, take your screwdriver and loosen up that screw there and pull these parts out a little bit and get that oil in there and make sure that it's fully oiled in that area. Number 9, oil the handle knob. Add oil to where the handle spins. Keep things smooth and silent. The next thing to do is to remove the entire handle. So this one
has a bolt that goes all the way through it. So I've got to unscrew this side and pull the bolt out because it is holding the other side of the handle. So this has been oiled. I can see the oil on it. This part in here, this is another place that you want to add oil into because this is always moving in here. Okay. Next place to oil is on both sides of the handle. So I put oil on this side, and then I put oil on this side. And then I will put the bolt back in the side with the handle back in. And this one, you actually screw this back in to secure the handle. So now that is really smooth now running. Tip number 11, oil the reel seat. Just a drop, especially if you store the reel on the rod for an extended period. It helps prevent corrosion. Tip 12 is to get professional service when your reel needs it. If it's still grinding after you've done all these steps, get it professionally serviced. I recommend Papa Chop's Reel Repair in Austin, and I'll drop his info in the video description. Sometimes you just need a bearing swapped out or a deep clean. Check with the company to make sure they service your make and model of the spinning reel. Most likely, they're not going to touch a $30 Walmart special. Tip number 13, prepare for storage. Loosen the handle and fold it in, and you're ready for storage or next travel. This is my reel storage box. This is what I travel with. Whenever I go to the coast, I take 2 reels with me. I take a primary and I take a backup with me. And to get both of those reels in the box, I will loosen the handle so that the handle bends in. It's not sticking out on the side. It gives you a little bit more room when you put it in the box, like so. And then this one, this reel, this is a Penn Battle reel. It just unscrews with the handle. You unscrew it and tip it in, and then you can put it in the box. So now you've got both of the reels in the box. Tip number 14, loosen your drag after each trip. Don't store your reel with the drag cranked down. It compresses the drag washers over time and weakens them. Tip number 15, use a reel cover, a sock, or a towel around your reel in storage. It protects your reel from knocks, dust, and you'll know you have a clean reel next time you go to use it. Wrap a towel around your reels. So I may take a box, for offshore fishing that I take, 10 different reels with me. I'll wrap them up in a rag like this and put them in, my big box that I've got all my reels in, just to keep them from, knocking each other and, keeps them a little bit safer. Tip number 16, label your maintenance date. Use a small tag or a piece of painter's tape with the last maintenance date. It helps track when oiling or servicing was last done. So today is 7/14/25. So we'll write that on some blue painter's tape, my reel, so that I know that that's when I did the last maintenance on this reel and cleaned it up. So there I wrap it and put it in my travel box for safe travels. We'll put the screwdriver in there. I'll keep my reel wash in another bigger box that I've got so it doesn't tip over. But again, there's my reels, and that's how I travel. Tip number 17, take your reel cleaning kit on every trip. Your Q-tips, your tiny screwdriver, your oil, your microfiber cloth, your reel cleaner, and you'll thank yourself every time you hit the water with a smooth running reel.
Ever wonder why your favorite fishing rod suddenly snaps, frays your line, or just doesn't feel right anymore? It's probably not bad luck or bad gear. It's how you're treating it. If you're new here, I'm Captain Kevin, and you might just learn something new today. Today, I'm breaking down at least 10 rod care tips every angler should know. These are simple habits that'll save your gear, your fish, and your money. From preventing broken tips to protecting your rods in the truck or on the boat, I've got you covered. Let's jump into it, because the only thing worse than losing a fish is knowing it was your fault. Leaning rods in the corner? That's a snap waiting to happen. Build a stand with 1.5-inch PVC. Keep your rods safe, off the ground, and organized like a pro. So in order to build a rod rack with this PVC pipe, you'll need to start with 1.5-inch PVC pipe. So depending how big you want to make it, you want to get 4 elbows, and then you want to get 2 T's for each row that you're going to make. You're going to want to get 1 T for each rod that you're going to hold in your rod rack. You're going to want to cut a number of your 1.5-inch tubing. These are the connector pieces, so cut these all about the same length. You'll start with the corner piece. You'll then connect in a T that's going to go sideways, because that's going to be one of your rows. Then you'll connect in another connector piece. Then you can put in a T, and then you can have a piece that's going to hold up the rod. Then this will be your end piece. You can actually run your rods. This will be on the far end, and you can run your rods along over here. And then we'll put one more rod right here as this example build, and then we'll go to the full system. So this is a start mock-up of the pieces that you need to build the rod rack. And here is the finished 30-rod rod holder. A loose rod in the back of your truck is like a ticking time bomb. You need to use a hard tube or travel case. So you want to get your rods positioned all together, and the fattest down here, these are usually your largest eyelets. It's better to have them kind of spun around in different positions so that they'll go into the rod tube easily. And then lay those ends there, and then slide them in gently. Like so. And this little pin here, always keep that pin secured up on top so you don't lose it. And then slide this over the rods and pull it into the first hole, which you will then secure with that clip. This is the last thing to go on your gear when you have the truck loaded. So this will lay in. You can bungee these down or ratchet strap these down on the top of your truck so they don't blow out. This is how to safely travel with your rods. Ever pulled a rod out to find the guides bent and the line wrapped around everything? Rod sleeves protect your guides, your line, and your sanity. They're like socks for your sticks. Just slide them on and forget the chaos. That will protect that line from getting wrapped up in other rods. I'll use these primarily when I'm going short distances, less than an hour away from my house. Otherwise, I'll stick all my rods in a rod carry case if I go down to the coast. If you're reeling your Texas rig all the way up, you're slowly wrecking your rod, one tap at a time. That bullet weight acts like a hammer on the top guide. Stop short and protect that ceramic ring. It's your rod's weakest armor. Think your line's getting frayed from a bad knot? Think again. Most of the grime on your line that it picks up, such as algae, salt, sand, grass, weeds, ends up right here on your guides. Run a Q-tip through each one of these. If it snags or leaves cotton behind, you've got a problem. The cotton swab also cleans up any of that grime that's on all of your eyelets. I also recommend after every trip
you take a rag and you wipe it down. You can get a little moisture on it. You can use some reel cleaner. This rod's been cleaned before, but just giving you an example here of going through and wiping it down and making sure all the grime and salt and junk that gets collected, riding in the boat or coming in from your reel and the line, make sure all that stuff gets cleaned up off your rod. Also make sure the reel seat screw is functioning good. This all looks very clean for this rod here. You don't want to be running with your rod and the rod holder with big heavy weights on your rods where they're clanking back into the rod. See how that can damage that rod going back and forth? You want to take that leader off, that hook and that leader off your swivel and stow that hook, and then you can hook your swivel into your hook keeper, or you can, these little swivel, these twist-on swivels are a little harder to swivel in there, but you can take a rubber band and put it on there easily, and then go down to your reel and close that up. And there, that's not going to beat up your rod as you're running offshore. And then take your weight and put it in a bucket or some secure place that you'll be able to put it on once you get to your fishing spot. Do not go driving down the road at 70 miles an hour with the rods and your rod holder in the back of the boat. Imagine little rocks or bugs hitting those rods and putting a little chip into it, and then the next time you go to set a hook, that little chip weakens that rod and breaks. Also, you pick up any dirt grime, all that grime you get on your windshield or in your truck, any tar, salt, all that stuff gets all over your rods if you leave them in the boat. Those need to go in the back of your truck or in a rod case when you're traveling. If your bait's free swinging, it's probably about to hook something it shouldn't. Use bait covers to stop the chaos. So when you finish up with using your bait, you're going to want to secure it to the hook keeper. And then you're going to want to take the line on the spinning reel and spin it around so the line is closest to the rod. And then you can adjust the drag, and you can pull a little drag out so that your rod is perfectly straight. And then you can take your bait keeper and wrap it around your rod and your bait to keep it from hooking anything else on the boat. So if people walk by on the boat, they don't get snagged, and then when you take it off the boat, you can pack up all your rods together if you're going to travel together with them, and then that hook doesn't snag anything if you're going to leave them rigged up. So most rods have hook keepers built into the blank, where I've got these hooks. This swim bait is hooked onto this one here. But there's some that come with no hook keeper. So one way to remedy that is with a little ring that you can use, you can get from your crankbaits. Just a little O-ring. Then you can use a little zip tie, and you can put that on your rod and zip tie that on there like so. And now you've got yourself a little ring, and you can snip off the end there so that doesn't stick out, get in the way. So now I can bring the hook down. Instead of hooking it into the eyelet, bring that hook all the way down to that ring, and then tighten it up. And again, spin the line around to the top where it's closest to the rod, and you can tighten down the drag so that it doesn't go away. And there, now you've got your hook keeper there with a little ring and a zip tie. Flip it down when not in use, and you'll never stab your hand or your gear bag again. And for the #1 rod killer, and you will see it happen every single day.
There, he finally committed.
Lifting a fish on the tip puts max pressure right where your rod is weakest.
I got my pliers if you want me to try.
Snap.
Oh, Kevin.
You need to use a net or grab the line and pull it up with the line or the leader. Don't just hoist it in like a crane with your rod.
Well, there went that rod.
Oh no! Oh man,
I tried to lift it out of the water and it broke.
Okay, this is a bonus tip for taking care of your rods and your gear. So if you've got a rig set up where you've got a slip sinker on top of a swivel, so I'm using this as a bait rig. Got my little number 4 hook there. Put that in the hook keeper, but see now that weight bounces around, hits the eyelet and stuff. If you're traveling on the boat or if you're going a short distance in your vehicle, you can take that line and wrap it around that eyelet 2 or 3 times until it's tight, and then that will stop that from hitting the eyelet. And then you can take your hook keeper, your hook guard, and you can put this down here on your line and your rod. Again, have the top of the spool on the spinning reel, the line closest to the rod. You can tighten that up or loosen it up. Make sure that your rod is straight so it doesn't have a bend in it. You let a little bit more line out there to get that rod fairly straight.
Take care of your rods, and they'll take care of your fish. These tips don't cost much, but ignoring them sure does.
Doug, come over here.
Got any rod care hacks of your own? Drop them in the comments. I'd love to try them. Hit that like button if you learned something. Subscribe for more fishing tips, and I'll see you on the next adventure. Tight lines. If you want to see my video on all the wade fishing gear I recommend to people, watch this video here. And if you want to see the top 3 knots I recommend to people, watch that video here.